What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ladies Who Bronché. I am your host, Julissa Contreras, and this is the podcast where we have all of the conversations that people don't want to have at the dinner table, but at the brunch table, anything goes. And this week, I'm hella hype because this person, you want to talk about community and the way community helps facilitate connections that become lifelong partnerships. This person entered my life via a project with Soul Project back in the middle of the pandemic, 2021. From day one, there was this magnetic energy that just made me feel like ain't no way there is a theater director out here who vibes the way this room is vibing. It was something I had never experienced before, and it felt like home. And that led us to working together and building a beautiful friendship over the years that also led to what many of you got to experience in Vámonos, an incredible production. And this is someone who I truly think models what it means to carve out your own lane, to do things your own way, and to be unapologetic and know that the only person that you need to believe in and hustle for is yourself. So, Tatyana, who the fuck are you?
God, that was such an amazing intro. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I already feel it. Uh, Hi, I'm Tatiana. I'm born and raised in Miami, Puerto Rican, based in Providence, Rhode Island, work freelance as a director all over the country. Yeah, I'm a daughter, which I'm feeling like extra lately. I'm a friend. I am a sibling. Yeah, I'm all those things. Definitely thinking about being a daughter lately.
You're the eldest daughter?
Well, from my mom, yes, but I have two half brothers that are my
Yeah.
dad's kids.
Yeah, but you're the eldest daughter. You're the,
Yeah,
the jefa in the space, which I
so I
think
am.
does translate to the way that you can command a room because like you are so fun and bubbly, and like I said, all the vibes in this space. And I appreciate the way that you keep up pace in ways where people might think, oh, we're not being productive. We're not getting to work. We're not doing the thing. And the next thing they know, that massaging, that intention that you have is exactly what allows for the room to then take off and flow because you're really good at relationship building, which I think is one of my favorite things about you. So I want to get into some brunch questions with you.
Okay,
We have not been to brunch officially, is what I'm realizing in this moment. I'm like, wait a minute, you and I need to go to brunch at some point. Just
for
putting in
sure.
that.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite.
But I'd love to know, what is your favorite brunch plate?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this. So it just depends. Are we doing like a Latino breakfast or are we doing like an American breakfast? So I feel
That's a
like these
great
are like
question. I would love to know the answer for each one.
okay. So I grew up in Miami. So Cuban breakfast is my absolute favorite breakfast. And it's I want to say it's like nothing major. It's like Cuban bread and they put it in la plancha and they put like they slather it with butter and then they put it in like it's not a panini press, but like they like flatten it. And so then it's like ooey gooey and hot. And then a café con leche with my lactate. And then with my lactate. And then like French fries, which is so random. French fries and fried egg and bacon, and then sometimes croquetas with like ham croquetas, and then you dip the bread in the café con leche. So there's like that like Cuban breakfast, which I love so much, and then like American breakfast. I love going to brunch with people who like to share. I know some people are like, I just want my own plate because I want to do savory and sweet, right? Like I want to order the omelet with like the like potato stuff, whatever they
Yeah, the
have,
whole fries.
the home fries, that's what it's called, home fries. The potatoes with the home fries and then, like, some sort of meat. I don't really like sausage like that. So, like, bacon,
Mhm.
right, or something like that. And then we order, like a pancake for the table.
Yes.
That's what is my yeah.
I love that. Let me tell you something. I don't know what brujeria is on pan con mantequilla and café con leche, but when I
Oh my
tell you
god.
that for me too, like when I am, when money's tight and I'm like, damn, what do I need to feel like I'm really eating luxurious? You get that pan buen sobao and it's perfect. I only wish
So
I
good.
had, I need one of those presses, but there's something special about the presses that they use at those restaurants. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is, but it I don't know, it makes it crunchy different.
I think it's, like, all the layers of other people's bread.
Yeah,
Like, like, bread all the layers because it's, like, usually, like, foil, right? Foil around the whole thing, and, like, it's just the amount of times and, like, la grasa from the butter
literally.
that's, like, outside and inside that makes it so good.
I
It's so
love
good.
it. So with these breakfast plates, what are you drinking?
So, I get heartburn, yo. so I can't do alcohol like that. You know what I mean?
Real.
So, so with my lactate, if I got my famotidine, okay, if I got
Come on, medication. All this medication shout out.
we can talk about famotidine, it's great, 20 milligrams twice a day. So with that, if I was gonna do something, I a like a mimosa, but like a mango mimosa or something like that. Or what do they
Mango.
do? What is it like the peach Bellini? Is that a thing?
Ooh,
Like a peach Bellini, like something that makes me feel like a fancy white lady. Like I like that feeling of like, oh my god, like my summer wine, like my summer. Anyway,
I love that. I went through like a peach Bellini moment where it's like all I would order. And I felt
yeah.
exactly like that. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm elevated, I'm classy. You
Like
can't
I
sit
feel
with
like
me."
you have to drink it with the pinky out. You're like, yeah, pinky out.
So tell us, what was your experience growing up going out to eat?
Going out to eat. We didn't go out to eat. Hay comida en la casa. What you talking about? Like, well, there was a time that things were going pretty good. So there was a time, and so I was allowed to go out to eat once a week, which was like every Friday. Me and my mom would go to like a restaurant, but it wasn't like we would do like pizza or things. I've been on a diet since I was 7, so I could only go to certain places and eat certain things. But Fridays, I was allowed to have like pizza or pizza. I can't even think about. Oh, one time we went to like the Crab House. It was like this crab place in Miami. I think it used to be called the Crab House. And so I was able to go there, and that was really exciting. They had like all you could eat like crab, and that was exciting. And like we could do that. But I remember there was a time where like Fridays we could like go out to eat. But I didn't really. Man, my mom would cook on Sunday, and we would eat that same thing for the rest of the week.
My mom would cook every day, but the only time she wouldn't cook was the weekends. And so the
Mhm.
weekends, though, we had a week's worth of different foods. And so we would have our melody calentao, and eat that. And at most, it's like, people think it's silly, but it's like, yeah, McDonald's was going out to eat, Burger
What?
King, because that was not, my mom doesn't consider
McDonald's?
that real food. So
McDonald's? Oh my god! If I had McDonald's, what? I was like, we are wealthy.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And it was just that way. Or like on the weekends, it would be the time where we would like gather with our tias and stuff like that. If we were going to Tia Kika's house, she was probably cooking. And so like we were eating out at Tia's house. So I totally relate to that. And I also think it has fed into my, I don't want to call it like an obsession, but like, for lack of a better word, obsession with going out to eat and being at
I love
restaurants.
it.
I love it.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, I don't know how to cook, so that's it's helpful. I like survival cook, but going out to eat is just like I didn't get to do that a lot, so now it's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
tell me, what is your favorite bochinche topic to discuss over a meal?
Whoa. I think that gossip is, it's not always bad. Okay, right? We go back to the time of our ancestors, right? Gossip was a tool, okay? A tool of connection. And also, gossip kept people safe,
Yes.
right? So, in that context, like gossip that doesn't hurt people is like fun. That sounds horrible, but that's fun. Also, depending on who you're with, like fighting with people about politics
Yeah.
is like frustrating, but also like that's the best time.
Yeah.
'Cause the people got a couple drinks in them, it's like people's guards are down, so that's a good time too, but then usually then we don't talk to each other for a while after that, so I don't know. I guess I don't even know. I'm trying to think of, like, what bochinche, but I don't yeah.
I think that honestly is true because it's like we're not always, or I don't know if you feel this way, we're not always the bearer of the bochinche, but we are ready and prepared to engage in the bochinche that is brought to the table,
And
right?
my favorite thing is acting surprised that I didn't know know, because 'cause I'm hearing it from I heard it from one person, and then it's like, "Oh, what? That's crazy," and, you act like you didn't already hear it. So you can
Mhm.
hear it from another perspective, but you're just, like, collecting all the bochinche. It's
Yeah.
like yeah, I don't like it to be, like, involved in it, but I like to know.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so we are going to move into our cheers section where we shout out dope people, brands, or organization doing dope shit. I would love to shout out Real Woman Have Curves because it was really beautiful. First of all, just Justina Machado killed.
Icon.
She eats that role of the mother in a way that I really, really. First of all, I didn't even know she could sing. Like, I guess I had only seen her in a few things in which she wasn't singing, and she has a beautiful voice.
I didn't know she could sing like that either.
Girl, like, eating it up. And honestly, like, the whole cast, I mean, let me be clear. The whole cast was actually truly phenomenal, and I cried several times throughout the show. I went with my mother to watch it, and I think that that was just the perfect recipe of, like, watching them being triggered and talking about weight and all that stuff, and knowing even my upbringing. You said, you've been on a diet since you've been 7 years old. Same. Like, I've never not been trying a diet on and off my entire life because I've always been plus size. And it's always been an issue, like for me, for the social peanut gallery that sits around me. And so it was very powerful because there's even the scene, like, because the movie, there's that moment where they take off all their clothes while they're working. And so when that musical number, that song, it was just so amazing. But to then like peek over at my mom every once in a while to see how she was vibing with the show, she was crying, she was engaged. And while there were like some bilingual isms in the show, it wasn't like Vámonos where there was like, oh no, we're speaking Spanish here and then we'll catch you up later. It was like, I don't know what to do with mi corazón, right? They had like that sort of stuff going on, which isn't my favorite, but I think for musical theater and that like campiness worked. So it was super seamless and she was able to follow the story. And there's a moment where they raid the factory and there's people who are like scrambling to not get caught by ice. And my mom like whispers to me, oh, I remember that when that used to happen when I worked in the factory. And it was sort of that moment where I like realized why these stories are important. Like, obviously, I know these stories are important as a creator of these sorts of stories, but wow, like to see my mom seeing herself as a factory worker, which she was like, yeah, I never had to panic because we talked about it more after the show. She was like, I never had to panic because I had my papers. I was here legally. But I would see people and she was like, but what's interesting is how we always talk about this with Latinos. But when I was in the factory, the people hiding were these Italian women who were here undocumented, people from all over the world. And she's like, there's a lot of white undocumented people in this country that we don't talk about and we don't center, and they have to run just as much as everyone else, which is just interesting to like see how this musical can bring out those nuanced conversation, but also just have so much healing. And there's a song where the protagonist talks about wanting to fly and go away to
The
college.
bird song, like
The
it was like a
birds,
bird song. I saw it at ART, and I remember that bird song, and I was
that
like,
song,
that song got me. I was good, and then that song really, really got me.
that really was literally same. That was the moment where I was like, "Oh my god!" And then at the end of the show, they do the reprise and they like end with it.
Yeah,
And as we're walking out, like the theater and flooding out, my mom is behind me and like grabs me by the waist and she goes in English, "You too, you just want to fly too," and I lost it.
that's it.
I lost it. Like I couldn't like I'm even tearing up right now. Like it was just such a like woo, because I remember when I moved to Colorado, like for like similarly, my mom was like, "What are you gonna do on the other side of the country? What if we need you?" Like just like that energy. It was actually quite chilling to see all the immigration narrative, especially with what's going on in the social climate, knowing that that story was not written thinking about this in mind. So to think about how a story from the 80s is still relevant here in 2025 gives us something to reckon with. And just because we are talking about Latina theater, I also want to shout out Buena Vista Social Club, which I got to see at the Atlantic. I haven't had a chance to see on Broadway yet, but like hope to if somebody could hook me up with some tickets. But that
Let me
show,
know. Same,
let
same,
me know.
same.
That show is phenomenal. That's all I have to say about that. Buena Vista Social Club, phenomenal, that music. But Tatiana, what do you want to shout out this week?
I think I have an organization, but with Buena Vista Social Club in particular, I was at lunch with someone and I see this group of Latino men come in. There was like 8 of them. And I was like, y'all are working on Buena Vista Social Club. I said like that because I knew
Immediately.
like 8 together, like, and they're like, yeah. And I was like, yo, thank you so much for what you're doing. Like, it was just so exciting. I think at the time they were in tech. And it's just so great to see like these 8 musicians. Like, when do you see 8 Latina musicians on a show on Broadway? You know what I mean? Like, that was seeing them and like hearing them speak Spanish. And they were like, just, they weren't even talking about the show really, but I knew 8 of them together.
Yeah.
I was like, for sure. This is folks from Buena Vista Social Club. So it made me really happy just to see them. I haven't seen it yet at all. Like I didn't see it, and I'm really excited. This time I'm going. I'm gonna see them both. We got 2 shows on Broadway. We gotta
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Okay, we gotta
Yeah.
go.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see it. And hello, growing up in Miami, And like going to Cuba and being there, going to Cuba several times, like definitely feel very connected to that material or like that source material. Also, I want to shout out Rhode Island Latino Arts here in Rhode Island. We do a bilingual touring show, and Jesus Baez has adapted this particular bilingual play, and it's going to
Amazing.
be touring throughout Rhode Island. And we started rehearsal. The director is Armando Rivera, who is a co-founded Teatro Chelsea that's in Chelsea near Boston. So it's so cool to see like these pockets of young Latina people being like, I'm gonna make this happen. When Marta started Rhode Island Latino Arts, like she was that. And now that organization is over 30 years old and like continuing to pass on the torch to younger generations and like not necessarily younger generations, but people who are just coming to Rhode Island. It's really an anchor. A lot of the work that she does is in oral histories. To hear we worked on a show called La Broa, which was about the history of Latinos here in Rhode Island. And that work could not have been done without Marta Martinez and without the book that she wrote about that history. So I think there's people who are already doing the work, that have been doing the work that sometimes we forget to acknowledge because they've just been institutions and are there. So I'm really grateful for Rhode Island Latino Arts and the work that they've done in this community because that's why I still live here, right? Like that's a huge part of when I directed La Tempestad for Rhode Island Latino Arts. Like I built a community here that I didn't even know. I didn't even know Latino people were in Rhode Island. Okay, I thought it was Hocus Pocus and like Hallmark movies. Like
And
I
then you
didn't.
found mad Dominicans.
It's all Dominicans. Dominicans, Guatemalans, and Colombians. That's what's here. And I really feel like taken in with the community here. And I'm continuing to make work here and I live here. And it's like crazy. I never thought I would live in like Pawtucket, Rhode Island. But yeah, Rhode Island Latino Arts, Teatro Verano, Jesus Valles, Armando Rivera. We're doing an adaptation of Faust. It's called Que Diablo Fausto. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, we'll be touring it all over Rhode Island.
I think local arts organizations, projects, initiatives are so important, and I wish that people understood just how valuable that is when they're thinking about funding or not even just big funding, right? Because we love to come for the rich people in their big pockets and be like, "Oh, you gotta give all the money," because yes,
Mhm.
and us in the ways in which if we have some money for the brunch, because brunch ain't cheap, right? So, like, if we have
No.
money for brunch, like, why not invest the extra dollars in going out to watch these shows, support these organizations, even when they're just
Mhm.
doing events where there's like talks and panels? It is so important to be present because the things you learn when you're in these spaces and rooms is incredible. And so, like, who else cares about Rhode Island in that way that they're going to be documenting and preserving Rhode Island in that way? And then
Mhm.
you just never know when that information is gonna be relevant to you, and in a time where histories and truths are literally being, like, erased, it is even more important to continue to support the work of people who are enriching local communities like this. So I absolutely love that shout out. Imma shove it in here just because as a Dominican, I feel really hyped to know that you had a beautiful time in Dominican Republic. Can we just
My
shout
God.
out Santo Domingo real quick?
When I tell you, I didn't know what to expect. I'm from Puerto Rico. I mean, I'm from Miami, but I go to Puerto Rico. I literally was just there. So I thought like I had an idea of what Dominican Republic was gonna be, but I was like and I love Puerto Rico, but I think I was just I don't know what I was expecting. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to the Caribbean. Like that's what I was expecting. But it was like so much more than that. Like it was so fun. I went to the art museum there, the like Revolution Museum, and like to see that it's like regular people keeping that going, like that, and that history when we were there were like mad schools like going through bringing students in, and I'm like, how great is it that they are teaching these young people? They were like high schoolers, and they had to write a paper because you saw them all with like their papers and stuff, and they were like taking notes, teaching them about revolution. Like that is incredible. But we're here, they're literally trying to act like ain't nothing happened. Like let's forget all the stuff that's happened, right? And to see the young people at that museum in particular about the sisters and about the history was really cool. And then the food. I think you
Mm.
go to the Dominican Republic, and this is my assumption. I was like, tres golpe, like I'm gonna have like super traditional Dominican food. I never thought to like go to Dominican Republic and have food from other cultures, like have Italian food, have like Middle Eastern food. Like it wasn't something I even thought would be something I would do in Dominican Republic. And I think I need to do that in Puerto Rico because every time I go to Puerto Rico, I just have Puerto Rican food. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
cross my mind to go to an Italian restaurant in Puerto Rico. But going to restaurants of other cultures in Dominican Republic, crazy. If you haven't done that, do it because it was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. I just needed somebody else to say it because when I be the one saying it, people are like, "Yeah, of course, you love DR, you love your country, we get it." And I'm like, "No, you don't. No, the fuck you don't." Because you come and you go to a resort and you don't walk around and you're not in it. And like that was your Santo Domingo experience. Wait until you get to go to places like Santiago, Moca, like like these other towns where like sure there are touristic points that you can
Yeah.
engage, but like they are not like at the center of tourism necessarily, so you are still very much just immersed with the
And there's like every time I told somebody, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but I'm gonna say it. Every time I told somebody I was going to Dominican Republic, they're like, you gotta be careful.
Mhm.
Like, be careful. Like, watch your stuff. Like, it's crazy out there. Let me tell you something. I know that like you cannot feel safe anywhere you go, especially when you don't know the place, right? But I felt so eerily safe when I was, and I'm not telling people not to watch their back and stuff like that, but what we went expecting and what was the actual was like they're like the Uber drivers are gonna scam you, lies. As a matter of fact, there were three different times, okay? Three different times that the person I was with, okay? The first time he dropped money out of his pocket, okay, with the students at the Madrigal. And the students came up to him and say, hey, you dropped this out of your pocket. We're talking about teenagers. The other time he gave, because like obviously the dollar is different in Dominican Republic. So he gave, instead of like 300s, he gave 3,000 to the Uber driver in cash. And the Uber driver was like, almost like, no, 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 no. He was like, God would never repay me if I took this money from you. That's what he said. And immediately. And then another time we were at the like oldest church. I think it's like the oldest church in the
in
Americas,
the Americas, yep.
which is like in Dominican Republic.
People sleep. That's where Columbus went first. People love to
I'm
forget
like,
that.
I'm like in the like literally beautiful. Like people go to Europe
Mhm.
and it's literally like a church that I would see in Europe.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And
Our
people like
nemesis, baby.
I know, I know, I know. That's literally what it is. Well, I'm
But it
saying
is
people
still beautiful
romanticize, but
architecture,
people
yeah. Yeah.
romanticize Europe, and it's like, baby, this is right there
Mhm.
in Dominican Republic. Like, you know what I mean? You can go right there. You don't gotta get on an 8 hour flight. You can get from here on a 4 hour flight and be in Dominican Republic.
Mhm.
But he dropped the money in the church, and an older lady came and handed it to him. So I'm just saying, like, that's three different instances of like you got to be scared in Dominican Republic. The three times that this happened, people in Dominican Republic like were like, "Here's your money, sir." You know what I mean? When they were like, "Oh no, you gotta no te lleva la prenda," like
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for
stigma.
speaking life into Dominican Republic on all of
Mhm.
our behalves. Now we are going to move into our Tuta Loca section where we call out people, brands, and orgs that are wilding or just cultural shifts that are like, what the fuck? As an entrepreneur, as a freelancer right now, things have been rough. Feels like around 2016, there was this boom of like Black, Latina, Indigenous businesses and brands that were here on the forefront and succeeding. And virality and influencer culture was really taking off around that time. And a lot of these businesses have now closed. A lot of these entrepreneurs have now had to switch. And I even think about it for artists and creatives, like the strike when that happened, that really slowed things down. We have institutions that are closing down, artistic branches. Everybody's going through it. And I just don't know, like, what was it all for? Is hustle culture really getting us anywhere? So I'm just curious, first of all, what are your thoughts around hustle culture in general?
I mean, it's two-sided, okay? I understand that what I do and the way that I do it is not sustainable long term. Like I understand that I cannot, and I'm talking about freelancing, right? Freelancing and the way that I do the hours that we work unpaid, the unpaid hours that we work is not sustainable. Also, I have seen the fruits of that labor. Not immediately, like I'm telling unpaid sometimes. And we should be getting paid for the work that we do. But it's like the way in which we show up for each other and like do things for each other. I've had people come like when I could pay them $25 to come speak to my students, and now I could pay them 75. You know what I mean? Like, right? There's certain things like I'm trying to figure out the right way to say it. Sometimes hustle culture is really challenging. There was a year, like in 2021, where I did not have a day off for a year and a half, and
Wow.
it landed me in the hospital. Okay, I was in the hospital because I did not take a day off, and I literally I'm not a person that really struggles with like panic attacks or anything like that. But I was having panic attacks. Like I was having to lay on the floor and put like ice on my chest so I could like breathe. And it really was, I think, overworking myself and working like a crazy amount of hours. I'm talking about like 80 hours a week, which is not sustainable, not sleeping, not eating well. Like, so I think hustle culture in that way is actually dangerous and I think not good. But I do find I like working hard. And I know that that's not always I like being busy and I like working hard. And I had to like reckon with that with my therapist to be like, I actually find enjoyment from like being busy and working hard and solving problems and like dreaming into things, which sometimes is unpaid, right? Like we've dreamt about a lot of things and had many conversations unpaid, like
Yeah.
unpaid. So in that way, I think if you're gonna hustle, if there's a way to like pour into yourself as you're hustling, like if you're hustling, let it be on like projects that bring you joy, that you work with people you love. So like that you're not burning the what do they say, burning the wick at both ends. Like if you're gonna be busy, work with the people you love. If you're gonna hustle, like do the things that you love in that way that bring you joy. And it could be that like your day job has nothing to do with the hustle, right? Like that you could just make money off of your day job.
That's really the key is that, I'll go back to that marker of what I'm saying, like beginning 2016 and sort of over the years, for some folks, preservation in those spaces, funding in those spaces even has meant the distancing of being able to lean into like, who are the people I love? Who are the people that I'm really doing this for? Because if it has not been lucrative, then suddenly we start to shift and be like, all right, well, I need to present myself this way. I need to be in these spaces and appease to these folks in order to keep this going, all with the intention of saying I'm doing it for the people and for our culture. But putting it in the hands of investors and people who don't have that same
Yeah.
investment and care in those particular communities and don't care about the nuance in the ways where you're like, oh, if we do it this way, even though it seems counterintuitive to your Harvard MBA business degree, trust me, I know my people. This is going to work out better than what you're trying to say. But oftentimes in those dynamics, you don't have the space. And I even think about certain theater makers who I know who have had productions of their shows in like fancier theaters than, what people might regard, let's say, Intar as, right? Even though Intar is hella important and is a cultural staple in New York City for Latina people. So you can't tell me it's not fancy, but some people might try to put it in that category. But the reality is that having the productions in these fancier spaces has also hurt the ways that the storytelling can excel because those places, A, don't even have the email lists to reach out to the
Facts.
community members who it's for. And so they're scrambling for like local partnerships and things like that. But it's just that they're scrambling to do it. And I think to your point, when you're building something, you want to think about, yes, how fast it can grow and you want it to grow big. But sometimes speed and scale really do compromise building legacy things, whether that is legacy projects or legacy companies. That really is a brick by brick endeavor. And sometimes we can't afford it. We can't afford for the growth to be slow. And I get it. And so I think just that back and forth, to your point, needs to be supplemented by some really deep self care. And I don't just mean fancy spas and being like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. So my self care can look like all this bougie stuff, which is something that I also see where it's like, yes, treat yourself, but also like be reasonable with yourself and find the things that ground you that don't require a particular lifestyle for you to access it. What does putting your feet in the grass and closing your eyes and meditating for 15 minutes a day
Mhm.
do for you? And if that's not your thing, like what does it feel like to be in the shower and allow yourself being in the water and just like allowing those moments of deep breaths and reflection to find their way to you? Because also the guidance and the best ideas that we can have to keep these things alive, to have innovative ways of progressing our projects and companies come intuitively, come naturally. And so sometimes hustle culture really creates a gap between the practices that we can be in to keep us going and also the people. And also the people, because sometimes you just need your good friends that's going to bring you back to reality and not like bring you down and knock you off of a high horse, but no, ground you in a reality of your power and say, actually, sis, I think what you need is to tell this Harvard MBA white person to go fuck off and do what you know you need to do. And I've
Mhm.
seen that work for people a lot more than surrendering their authenticity and truth for the sake of a buck. So those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for sharing yours. into our plate of the day because I think it really does correlate, right? This idea of carving out our creative paths unapologetically. And so your story, as we were working together and I got to know you more, and you would even encourage me and be like, girl, go to grad school, which I did apply. I did listen, I did apply. It didn't go through that one time. And maybe I'll try again at some point. Who knows? But I remember the passion with which you had introduced that idea to me and you shared some of your story. And I was and still am just really in awe and truly inspired by your journey. So I'd love for you to share with folks, when did you know you wanted to be a theater maker and how did you manifest yourself into the stage of your career?
There's like so many answers, but I so I know that it sounds like I'm about to sound like a nepo baby, but I promise you that's not the case. I just want to say these things right now. So my mom was a costumer, and my dad was an actor. And my dad, for all intents and purposes, but I just realized someone just told me that that's the word. It's not intensive purposes. It's
Thank
intense
you for teaching me that
and
right at this
isn't that
moment.
crazy? It's intense, and it was someone who taught me that English is their second language.
I always say for all intensive purposes.
That's what I say, but it's all intents and purposes. Isn't that crazy? Okay, anyway, my dad was my dad was an actor, and he was pretty successful. I will say that I grew up mainly with my mom and not my dad, but like yay him. So it was always like something that was like further away, but it wasn't anything that was encouraged for me to do by any means. So when I graduated, when I'm talking about graduated like high school, I started working. Like I didn't go straight to college. I had to get a job. So I worked at Blockbuster and then I got poached at Blockbuster. And I started working for Bank of America. And that's where I worked. I was a banker. And then I took out my 4K and I went to LA and I was like, I'm going to be famous. I literally thought I was going to get, because I thought I wanted to be an actor. I thought I was going to get off the plane and they were going to be like, you are the one that I want. We want you. That's what I thought. I swear to God. I swear to God. That's what I thought was going to happen. I lived in LA for like a year and I realized, oh no, I need to go to school. I need to go to school. And really, like, to make a very long story short, I really do think that it was like education, like school, that totally transformed the trajectory of my career. I never would have the career that I have right now if it was not for me, if it wasn't for school. So I went to New World School of the Arts in Miami. I thought I wanted to be an actor. I directed there for the first time my senior year or like my last year there. And it really opened up like a whole like world of possibility. I was like, I can be a part of a rehearsal process and not be perceived. That's really nice. I love that. We can talk about Lady at the Counter though later. But have I talked to you about Lady at the Counter?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
we
have
can
to
talk about
write you in. I have it in my head. You will be a lady at a counter.
Lady at the Counter. Okay, I'm gonna manifest this for everybody listening. Okay, I want to be Lady at the Counter. Okay, if you have a movie you making, if you have a TV show, I want to be in it, and I want to be Lady at the Counter. Okay, I will be a nurse at a hospital. I will be the like lady at the register at the gas station that tells you your card is declined. Okay, I want to be a lady at the counter, and then I want someone to do a documentary because I'm gonna be Lady at the Counter so much that you're gonna be like, I know this person, but I don't know from where. And then there's gonna be like, this person, Tatyana-Marie Carlo, has been Lady at the Counter 1,000 times, and you've seen her and you had no idea. And then they do a documentary on Lady at the Counter. So that's my dream, separate from what I'm doing right now. Okay, that's just like an alternate life. So anybody that needs a lady at the counter, I can be your person. But anyway, so going to particularly grad school, right? I don't know how I got into the school. It's crazy. I didn't even know what Brown was. My friend Gloria was applying to Brown. I was just doing ERDAs, which is like you pay one fee to go to a bunch of schools, and I get essentially apply for a bunch of schools at ERDAs. And it makes it for someone who doesn't want to pay $100 for each application, you pay like $100 for one application, and then it gets sent to a bunch of schools. So I was just gonna do that. And then my friend Gloria is like, please apply to Brown with me. And I was like, fine, girl, I'll do it if they give it to me for free. Like if they let me register for free, and I called them, they're like, okay, if you submit this form, then you can do it for free. So that's really why I applied to Brown. And going to Brown, I always sound like a Brown commercial, but it really, really changed the trajectory of my career. So like relationships you make going to a school like Brown, The location, right? I'm going from Miami to Rhode Island. I'm only 3.5 hours from New York, 45 minutes from Boston. I'm like 6 hours north from Baltimore. You know what I mean? 5 hours from Philly. I'm just like in proximity in a way that being in Miami, you would have to get on a plane to get anywhere else. So proximity, the relationships that you make, the art, like the theater that I was able to do under the people that I was able to at the time, really all those things just made it possible for me to have the career that I have right now. And I know that I sound like a brown commercial.
No, it's so good. It's so good. And weren't you like not to like put the extra spotlight on you, but weren't you like the only Latina director in their program that also now no longer exists? So you will always be the only Latina who went through their directing program?
Yes.
Yes.
There are 2 Latinos that have gone through the program and me.
Mhm.
And I think they started in, like, 2005, 2004 or something like that, so, like, the 20 something years, yeah, I
Yeah.
would be the only,
Yeah,
which
you
is really
you
sad, actually.
showcase.
Yeah.
But, like, that's such a I think and that part and, like, not that that is not the most important start part of your story by any means, but it was the part that really surfaced for me, like, yeah, you're always where you're meant to be at. Like, if you are continuing to just follow the yes in your spirit or your gut that's like, "Yeah, let me just fuck it." Fuck it. Like that energy is very powerful because it can then drive you to be in a position like that. It's not like you were like, when I grow up, I want to be the only Latina director to go through this program in this prestigious place. Like sometimes we like to write out our goals and dreams in a way that can be helpful.
Mhm.
But sometimes we do it to the point where we psych ourselves out of even greater opportunities that may come to our doorstep. And I think you're right. Like, I don't think school isn't for everybody, right? But there are those of us, and this is what had inspired me to be like, yeah, you know what? You don't want to go to grad school because you don't want to be back in an institution, but also like you don't know what you might get out of that space. And it might be bigger than this idea of not wanting homework. You know what I
Yeah, yeah.
mean? Like sometimes we let little things like that get in the way of a bigger opportunity. And again, while I'm somebody who does believe, yes, school might not be for everybody, I also believe that some of us do need these spaces to continue to learn. I think learning is so important and learning in action and being in programs and studying things that you care about really allow you to immerse in ways that I'm sorry, Googling won't do. I don't care how fancy AI is. Being in community and around others in that learning environment also gives you the people skills and lets you know, well, how am I as a director? How do I respond in space or even as an actor, or whatever your role is, even if it's not in the creative arts, to be in community with people who are like minded or are working towards similar goals really allows for you to be well rounded in a way that you cannot learn in isolation. And so, if only to continue to sharpen your social skill and widen your network, to your point, school can be a really wonderful thing. I also think that your personal tenacity, just like your mindset and going back to this idea of being the like daughter, right? Being the girl in the space and having that mentality. It's like the double-edged sword. I think about Encanto and like the under pressure, that song. It's that, but it is also the ways in which our skin is toughened in a way where we get to come into these environments and fuck shit up in the best
Yeah.
ways. I think that you are such a shining example. You don't have to be the A plus academic superstar. You just need to be willing and able and trusting your gut and holding fast to your authenticity. So I'd also love to know, like, what are some challenges that maybe you've faced or have seen other creatives face in trying to carve out their lane in these landscapes where they want to be this authentic, but there are things that are oppositional?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about what you said about the good grades. I say this is gonna sound cocky as hell, okay? But I say you can either get good grades or you can be the best, and I was the best. Like that is what because I did not get good grades. The fact that I went to an Ivy League school is crazy because I did not like I just didn't get good grades, especially in high school. It wasn't I was like not interested in it. I wanted to be anywhere but there. The biggest thing when I went to Brown, I remember feeling so incredibly lost because I hadn't been anywhere. There's like a secret, like university, I want to say like rule book that you only learn if you had someone who had done it before, or a sibling that had done it before, a parent that had done it before, it's a neighbor that done it before, like somebody who's done it before. When you are the first, you don't have that rule book. So I remember asking, being like, I need help. I was struggling so much when I first went because everyone understood how this like system worked and I was totally totally lost. Like now, if I were to have a kid, baby, I know how to get them into one of these schools, like from kindergarten. These people plan like the whole lives of children to get them into these schools. Now I have that information because even though I didn't go for undergrad, like I understand how it works. So that was really hard at first. And I remember going up to the people who are running the program at the time and being like, is there another Latina that I can talk to that went through the school? I had no idea. It did not even cross my mind that I could be the only one. It did not even. I was like, "Can you please connect me?" I had seen like pictures of other people, and I was like, "Well, maybe she could be," and like maybe she could be, like looking at the names and being like, "Well, maybe," but she looks like she could be Latina. And they were like, "There isn't anyone. You are so lucky." I remember them telling me like, "You are so lucky," and I didn't have the language at the time to understand my discomfort with that. You are so lucky. Now I understand. Like, that's fucked up. You know what
Yeah,
I
like
mean?
it ain't luck. I'm the best.
I'm the best.
Period.
Like, you are lucky. You are lucky that I'm here. So that was really, and that was my first week. Like my first week here when all this stuff, language was being thrown at me. People were using these big ass fancy words. And I'm like, this girl from Miami being like, what is happening? I don't know nothing. People know where things are. Go to the bursar, go to the registrar, go to this person.
Have you ever felt that stigma now having graduated, being out here in the working world, non-white, right? Not even just Latina people, but like non-white directors and creators. Is there still some of that you're so lucky energy that you see in the landscape?
Okay, I'm gonna sound hella privileged in about a second. Okay, I'm just gonna say that because I understand where this comes from, but it has been so interesting. And I know I'm talking about Brown. I'm gonna talk about Brown again, but it has been interesting the reactions that I get from people when they find out that I went to Brown.
Mm.
There are very different and varied. I try as much as possible not to code switch. Like I really, it is a journey sometimes because I immediately want to be like, thank you for calling Bank of America. I want to go into that. I try in my life and I promised myself when I went to Brown that I would not code switch, right? That I would try to be my full authentic self. And I didn't have the language for code switch when I went to Brown, but I knew that I didn't want to like pretend to be a version of myself that I'm not to fit in to this institution because I knew the like Ivy League of it all and I did not want to be that. So in life, I really try not to be that person. And I think that people have an idea of who went to a school like Brown or who went to these Ivy League institutions. So two things happen. And I think they're really interesting. And this is, of course, this is so nuanced. And I'm going to talk about two particular different types of things. But understanding this is nuance, y'all. From white folks, when they find out that I went to Brown, I get a leaning. It's like now I'm worthy of being listened to because I went to Brown. I see the body language like shift and change, and it's so interesting because I don't sit there and say I went to Brown University. I just talk about. I usually say I went to grad school in Providence. And then people will say, did you go to Brown? Right? Because they know it. Or they'll say, what school in Providence? And then I'll say it. But I typically always say, I went to grad school in New England, or I say I went to grad school in Providence. I don't say, or in Rhode Island. I went to grad school in Rhode Island. The other thing that I get from sometimes my contemporary, like people who are from the Latina experience, or is a pullback of like, oh, well, I didn't go to a fancy school like that. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know what to say to that. Like I don't know how to respond to that. And that has been a challenge and I understand there's like so much privilege of going to a school like that. So I'm not trying to be like, oh, I went to Brown and people are like mad at me or something like that. But it's just interesting that that happens. It's like the leaning in and the leaning back, and it happens on both sides. Like other people will lean in, like there will be Latina people who lean in, but that is something that I didn't realize, and I've heard this from other people who went to those kind of like fancy schools. That has been that's just something that I've noticed and been aware of and kind of surprised me because I'm not from that world. And I feel like the other thing where they're like, oh, now they think that I'm like somebody's child. You know what I mean? Or like this like generational that I come from a generation, the what do they call the like I don't even know the name. Legacy?
Like legacy babies? Yeah, I
Like
think that's
legacy where it's like somebody's kid. I don't even know what it's called. Like
mhm.
somebody like great grandfather went there and all the great grandfather like everybody went to that school. Or they'll think that I'm that kind of person that I come from this extreme privilege and was able to attend a school like that. So this is I guess a like perception thing. I don't even know what's the right way to say that, that I guess. And I don't want to say it's necessarily a challenge because there's so much privilege about going to a school like that. But there is a like us versus them that sometimes happens. So that has been a challenge, or like it feels weird, especially when white folks will lean in once they feel like I am of value because of that. Like that feels super weird and super like I need to go take a shower. I feel gross.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, I get that because it's like to your point, like the things that you do, even the kind of theater you create, if you would share why you stay in the lanes of the kind of theater you like to create, right? By choice. It's not like, oh, I'm a Latina, so I have to work on Latina stuff. And that means that there is a passion behind that. And there's even a passion behind the way you like working with translations and bilingual work, which is why I think, it was divine that we met. And I didn't know Vámonos was going to be what it was when we first met because we met on La Greña. So, like, I think that there is a gravitational pull that you have that is about you and it's not about the spaces you've been in. I think you just needed to be at those right places at the right time because like your career has been incredible and wait until the next phases start to come in. I do think that you will continue to thrive in your lane as a creative director across mediums. I could see you doing other stuff as well. But I think that it's your passion that drives you. And so I have even been in spaces with you where I see that lean in, lean back that you're talking about. But once you get to work, like everything shuts down. And I
yeah.
think that that just again speaks to the power of walking in your authenticity. So I'd love any advice that you have for others who are trying to carve out their lane, whether they are associated with institutions or spaces of elitism that others lean away from or feel like they're insufficient because they don't have these sorts of ties, but they can lean into their power a bit more. What would you say to those folks?
Something that I love is I don't want to say I love being underestimated. I don't think that's the right word. Really, like joy is something I work on every single day. I think that joy comes easier to some people than others, but being a happy person, and I'm not talking about toxic positivity, right? Like that's a whole other thing that I also have to like navigate and learn not to do. But joy is so important in life and in the work that I do. And sometimes it can seem people underestimate the work that I can do because of the playfulness in which live my life and the like silliness and the like I don't know how to explain it, but like the silliness, the joy that I move through the world in, and they think that can't be that doesn't equate to hard work or smart work. So what I say to people as you're working through like you can be your full authentic self and run a room. You can be in charge and be silly and be playful and be joyful and it be okay. It is hard for people. Sometimes initially, I will say hard when people start working with me. They think like, "Oh, what's this girl doing? She doesn't know what she's doing." And you've seen it where like I had to crack people open and I don't do it like I'm not intentionally trying to crack people open. Like it just happens through time and with work. And it doesn't mean that I can't have tough conversations and that I cannot be stern and that I can't step up. I think about and Vámonos, the moment with the noodles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think about that noodle moment a lot where you have to stand up and you have to say something, but I don't think that I have to be I call it like serious fun. Like I don't have to move through the world in the way that directors are perceived or educators are perceived, that I can still be like, youthful, playful, joyful, and all those things, and still run a room, be in charge, run an organization, run an institution. I can do all those things. And I would say to anyone else, you can do all those things, being your full authentic self and not having to compromise the way that you want to be because you want to be perceived as like the big boss.
I love watching you crack people open. I love watching you make so serious people because sometimes it'll be like the actors in the room that come in with that like energy. Because we're talking about you as a director, but there are also the performers who go through institutions and lose their authenticity and they are Black or Latino or whatever. And suddenly they get cast to play themselves and they get matched with a writer like me who's writing y'all how we are in my side of our culture and you can't connect, and it's like they've trained you out of your reality. And so to watch the way you really work to bring people, again, to bring them down, not off of a high horse, but into their grounding power, is such a beautiful thing. And I feel like, and I won't speak for every actor that I've ever been in a room with you in, but I would bet a lot of money that most of them feel like they have learned or taken something away from your process. And not every actor says that about every director that they work from. And I've never had you as an educator, but I've been around rooms where I've met students of yours and have been in interactions, and they love you. Like, they love you. And so I think that when we are in these positions, it's important to move forward, because while the people who maybe sit above us, quote unquote, may not really fuck with that process, the people who are receiving the medicine and the wisdom do. And that is actually what counts. And that is who you are there for. And I think your commitment to that has really shown. So I think y'all listen to this advice. Tatyana is a trusted source. I had pulled 2 affirmation cards before this recording. And the 2 affirmation cards that came out were, the first one is, everything I need is already in front of me, which I think really does lean into this power of like, you got it. Like, if you got the sauce, you got that sauce. You just need to be ready to chef it up. And the other one is, today might not be easy, but I will make it worth it. Which is to say, like, this lifestyle of being a freelancer, of carving out your own lane in any industry that you might be working in, is truly not an easy one, but it is worthwhile. And it is 222 here on the East Coast as we are recording when I'm saying that. So I just want to like doubly pin that as a truth, right? Like, this is how it works. There isn't any secret book that someone's not handing you that has all the codes. You have the codes. It's within you, and you need to make the best of what you have with what you can in the moment, knowing that that dedication will open the door to more resources and more possibility. Things do get easier, and then they get hard again, but they get easier again, because life is about waves. There is no linear way that things are just going to be, you're going to be great and you're set for life. It just doesn't work that way. So don't get discouraged, stand your ground. And I hope that Tatyana's wisdom today has inspired you to continue in your path in that way. All right, Tatyana. So we have gotten to the end of the podcast. We're paying the bill. Any special shout outs? Anything? Where can we find you and follow you?
I am Tatyana-Marie C on Instagram. It's a private page. You're gonna have to like, but please, add me and I'll add you back. I have a website.
But yeah,
Oh, TatyanaMarieCarlo.com.
period.
TatyanaMarieCarlo.com. Being clear about that. That's my website. I'm not, I wish I was an influencer. Like, in my close friends on Instagram
Hilarious.
that is my wanting to be a TikToker.
I love it.
And I feel like I could be, and I think I'm funny.
You are. I just want to say for the record that I love that it's private, because it makes me feel exclusive to know that I'm in the green circle, but it feels like the content is truly for me in a ways that I can't really say for every influencer, but I know that content is just like incredibly relatable and targeted, and you're fucking hilarious. So
Love it. And I love just being like, it's my diary, I feel like. I feel like my close friends on Instagram is my diary. Yeah.
and you can find us at Ladies Who Bronché across all platforms. And you can listen to this podcast on any streaming platform. If you're listening and you haven't tuned in to watch, be sure to just check us out on YouTube and look at our beautiful faces. We looking real good. So tune in. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, Bronché.